All right. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? I did not test my microphone. I hope you guys can hear me. All right. Well, happy weekend. Happy Saturday. Happy Sunday. I saw someone who joined me first time live. Oh, A. Watson. Thank you. Well, welcome. Okay, good. Excellent. Can you guys hear me? Can you just type yes or no? Because I'm a little concerned with this audio. Um, all right. Okay. All right. I assume people can hear me. All right. This news about 2 trillion. Oh, okay, good. All right. Thank you, Russell. This news about missing $2 trillion, caught my attention, and I thought it's quite bizarre. But looking into it, I think it's something important that we need to get. We won't know exactly where the money went, but I think we should get some sense of what has happened. So hopefully that's what we'll find out. Okay, hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thomas. Excellent. All right. So recently, a Chinese financial analyst wrote on Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, that nearly $2 trillion trade surplus that China has accumulated over the past 3 years during the pandemic is missing. And it sparked curiosities among Chinese internet users about, the disappearance of such a huge amount of money and where did the money really go? And the bigger trouble is, how come we have not heard anything, right? It's understandable that people in China don't talk about it because they could get themselves into trouble. But how come we have not heard anything from from the army of financial analysts that we have here? And the discrepancy is the size of more than 10% of China's GDP. I mean, inflated GDP. If you really look at the real GDP, it's probably way more than 10%. And last but not least, under CCP's tight grip, how could have the massive amount of money possibly left China? So today's discussion, we'll break it into three parts. Stay until the end. I think the end is shall we say, very amusing. Okay. So first we'll talk about what did he mean by missing? Did the $2 trillion really, is really gone? And then the second item we'll talk about is what could have happened or where could it have gone? Where could it have been gone? And then lastly, we'll talk about how did the massive money possibly have left China? And I think that's the entertaining part. So according to China's official data, during the 3-year pandemic, China sold more goods on the international market than it imported. So the official trade data from China show that it has accumulated $1.9 trillion in trade surplus from 2020 to 2022. And these are official numbers, right? That he's quoting. So his name by the pseudonym Lao Man wrote on February 9th that this number, this trade surplus in US dollar, denominated in US dollars, is missing or is not representative in any of China's macroeconomic data. And it's not reflected in China's foreign exchange reserves. And it's not in the central bank's foreign exchange accounts. And it's also not reflected in the foreign currency deposits in commercial banks. I do have a slide, but it's kind of small. Let me see if so here's his post. This post is on Twitter. I think his account name is BSC_data. His Chinese name is not real name, but the pseudo name is Laoman Data Analytics. So basically, here's the number. Let me make it bigger. I don't know if you can see, but if you can see, I circled 3 numbers. Okay, so the bubble, the circle on the far left is the central banks. This is basically a balance sheet for the central bank, or the consolidated banks. So the left, so it's chronologically by year, so starting from 2000 and ending at 2022. The first column is total assets, and then the next column right to it on the far left, which I circled in red, if you look at the last three columns from 2019 to 2022, the numbers did not change. It's basically it's this is the foreign exchange accounts of the central bank. And then moving across to the right, foreign reserve is the second one, is the middle column. It also did not change over the past 3 years, right? Remain almost the same. And then the last column is the foreign currency deposits by foreign banks. And it went from, I think it's $760 billion in 2019 to the end is 854 or 800, almost $855 billion in 2022. So over the 3 years, there's an uptick of $95 billion, and it's less than 5% of the $2 trillion that's missing. So he basically said that it's just not that number, that the 1.9 trillion is not reflective in any of China's macro financial data. So where did the money go? And that's his question. Let me come back. And a few days later, he followed up with more details on the makeup of the surplus using 2022 as an example. And that's what I was, oh, what happened to the number? Oh, here it is. Okay, that's what I was typing. That's the delay. I was typing this up right before the live stream. Let me make this bigger because I think this will help you. So he used 2022 as an example. So this is in 2022, China had $878 billion worth of trade surplus. And if you break it down, you see that the bulk of it is in private enterprises. They contributed to 1.1 billion trillion. I'm sorry, $1.1 trillion trade surplus. And then the foreign enterprises, including companies from Hong Kong, Macau, contribute, and also other parts of the world, contribute 170 billion. Now, state-owned companies, they are responsible for a lot of the imports. They have a negative. They have a trade deficit, not a surplus. So overall, so basically, he's saying the bulk of the trade surplus is with the private companies. From this, and then he said, so people asked the question, could it be that the private companies have secretly kept the money from the trade outside China? And he dispelled the idea. He said China's Foreign Trade Administration has strict rules on foreign trade settlement, which don't allow payments to remain overseas for a long time. The administration has a tight control on companies, particularly private companies. And leaving large amounts of unsettled foreign trade is an unlikely scenario for private companies. And he said there may be some transactions that have not been settled for the last quarter of 2022. That's possible, but because we're talking about 3 years, so 2020 and 2021 should definitely have been settled. So then, this post triggered so many questions, right? People ask, could the money have been kept in Hong Kong? Or could the money have been spent on buying gold? And Lauman said that the purchases of gold are considered imports and have been included in the trade calculation. And also he said that Hong Kong's foreign reserves and foreign currency accounts didn't see an uptick in the past 3 years either. Then some people speculated that maybe China used the money to repay its foreign debt. But the data showed China foreign debt declined only slightly over the 3 years. And then people asked, well, was it because it's related to foreign investors divesting from China? And the analyst who made this claim said no. He said, quoting official number from China. I mean, he's very thorough in getting back to people's dispute or questions by by providing original official data. And he said the 3-year he said the 3-year accumulative trade surplus is full caliber surplus, which has already taken into account the service trade, right? Not just commodity, but service trade revenues and expenditures, and included the difference between foreign investment and foreign capital absorption. So he said all of that is already reflective in the numbers. So then comes the question, could it be that the $2 trillion trade surplus was bogus and China never did that much export during the pandemic? Well, this is possible because the $1.9 trillion surplus seems high because it almost equals to the total trade surplus or surpluses of the 10-year period before the pandemic from 2010 to 2019. Now, if you look at that time, China didn't experience a major transformative change in its in the product lineup of its exports, such as going from exporting low-end consumer goods to cutting-edge high-tech equipment. Like that didn't happen during the pandemic. And also the country went through a tough 3-year, lockdown. So it does seem a little high, right? So for China to accomplish so much export within 3 years and accumulated the same amount of trade surplus within 3 years as the previous 10 years had accumulated. So that seems high. The good thing is foreign trade is bilateral. So China's trading partners technically have the same data. They can figure out China's total imports and exports if they pull their numbers together. So those of you who have the means, should look into China's real trade numbers during the pandemic and to see if China did, have that much surplus. But I think it's impossible for China to inflate that number by 2 trillion because it seems high. For the 3 years, the official total exports for the 3 year was 10 trillion. That's almost like inflating by 20%. I think the number may be inflated, but not as much as the entire $2 trillion. So the analyst who brought up this question wrote, he said, he brought up the question. He didn't provide any answer. I think he knows, but he couldn't say it or dare not to say it because he's still in China. But he did say this. He says such a large amount of money, even when it's placed in the global financial markets, it's an extremely large sum that in theory cannot be hidden at all. But exactly where is it? Since then, this guy who brought up this question, his account has been silenced. Do I have a slide? Here it is. Oh, here, not here. Yep, this is his Twitter account. It says, due to violation of relevant law and regulations, this user is currently silenced. He's not allowed to make any post. So from that we know he has touched the nerve of the regime, right? He definitely brought up a good question that the CCP does not want us to find the answer for. So there are many theories as far as where the $2 trillion have gone. So people are saying maybe it's used by the regime for adjustment for payment errors, which were not accounted for in previous years, meaning money used to fill other financial holes, or there are unaccounted capital outflows from banks such as foreign credits, which consumed foreign exchange or reserves. There are also this one Chinese stock analyst who pointed out that funds from China may have prevented the American stock markets from crashing in recent months. I looked at what she said. I think what she said needs to be substantiated, but she definitely brought up a good point, something that's eye-opening. We can save that topic for future discussions as far as whether the funds from China have kind of prevented the American stock market from crashing. We could save that for later, but I think it's yeah, we could, or I urge those of you who have the means, who are in this business, definitely look into that. But what I want to tell you is that most of the people who joined the online discussion believe that the missing $2 trillion have left China through unofficial channels amid the ongoing Chinese exodus, and the money has landed overseas. So the next comes a bigger question, or a more troubling question. How did the entire financial world outside China neglect a discrepancy the size of more than 10% of China's GDP? Because this Chinese analyst's discovery isn't rocket science. It's basic macroeconomic data and simple math, all based on CCP's official data. And economists and financial analysts who monitor China's economy should have noticed it. But we haven't heard much noises from the West about this huge discrepancy in China's macro financial data. In fact, somebody said after this post, and someone showed China's foreign exchange reserves for the past 20 years and said, despite the huge trade surplus that the CCP has, the foreign reserve has been kept at constant for 11 years. So someone else brought that up. So we haven't heard much noise. So this may not be just a problem that show up in the past 3 years. It might have been happening for a while, right? So that got me thinking, why people are not talking about it if we have such a huge discrepancy? Have the financial analysts on Wall Street and in the financial industry around the world all failed to see the discrepancy? I don't believe so. I think they have noticed it, but choose not to say anything. Why? Because the financial institutions they work for probably know exactly where the money is and may have even benefited from it. A few people mentioned that The Economist magazine estimated in its October 27, 2012 issue. I have a picture of that article. This is the one. I haven't got the chance to read it, but people mentioned that this article had estimated that a total of $10 trillion had been laundered out of China in the 20 years leading up to the time of the article. With more, so 10 trillion over 20 years, but that was before 2012. So with more accumulated wealth and the growing number of wealthy Chinese leaving China, 2 trillion worth of capital flight from China in 3 years isn't an unrealistic number. So if I look around, almost every Chinese that I know with money in mainland China who can afford to live overseas is trying desperately to leave. And they're trying to find ways to send money overseas. Recently, Japan was surprised to discover that a Chinese woman bought an uninhabited island near a military base in Okinawa. And Chinese are buying real estate in the United States, such as Texas and Las Vegas. Texas officials are considering passing a law to prohibit land acquisitions by the CCP. So then the question comes, Xi Jinping has tried very hard to stop capital flight ever since he came to power. He has implemented measures to tightly control foreign currency transactions. So, how exactly did the Chinese find ways to send money overseas? I remember some of you have asked me that questions. So, how do Chinese send monies overseas? So here, there are 8 different methods that Chinese use, and some of them are just very creative, shall we say. So the first one is called underground money exchanges, right? So in Hong Kong and mainland China, even here in the United States, there are a large number of underground money exchanges engaged in the wealth transfer business. So it works like this. If a Chinese American wants to send money to his family in China, he wires the money to an intermediary account in the US. He does not send the money directly to China. Instead, someone else does. So a person who wants to exchange renminbi for dollar um, sends the money to his family in China. And in this exchange process, he will receive the US dollars. So you see, the renminbi transactions stay or the renminbi transaction stays in China, and the dollar transaction stays in the U.S. And the underground exchange provides a service to the two parties who have a foreign exchange need without initiating a cross-border transaction. And the exchange takes a percentage as a service fee, and that's very common. Um, and then the second method is called the swarm of ants approach. Beijing has imposed a $50,000 cross-border remittance cap per person per year. So each person is allowed to send no more than $50,000 a year overseas. And this number may have even been reduced recently. Um, Chinese have come up with a way to utilize this 50,000 allowance and call it the swarm of ants. Swarm of ants method. By using their friends and families' quota or quotas, or by buying a large number of personal IDs, they are able to use multiple accounts to gradually send large amounts of money overseas. It's the most common means for Chinese to transfer money, but it's only limited to people with less money because the operation is very labor intensive and time consuming. You need to find 10 people. If you need to wire $1 million, you need to find 10 people and do it over 2 years. So it's very labor intensive. And the regulatory authorities have increased their surveillance of this type of activities. So it's becoming more and more difficult. And the banks can deny your request to send money if they detect your method. And also, they can easily find out. With AI and big data, they could find out like related people all of a sudden, like everyone in this family, including, students who don't have 50,000 US dollars, is sending money overseas. They could find, you know, your scheme like that through data. The above two methods are used by ordinary Chinese, and the super rich don't use those at all. And they have other ways. So the super rich use, they establish the third method is foreign shell company, right? So they just set up a foreign shell company outside China, such as in Hong Kong, Macau, the Cayman Islands, or the British Virgin Islands. And the shell company owns 100% of the business in China. All profits they make in China are turned over to the parent company, and they thus can leave after paying taxes. So all the Chinese company, like Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, JD, Xiaomi, Sina, they all have foreign registered parent company. That's already known. Okay, it gets more and more interesting. I'll tell you as I go down the list. The next is called overseas asset acquisition. Um, and you know this, you've already known this as well. So Chinese like to offer higher than market price to buy assets overseas. This enables them to move money across the border faster. The most famous of them is the former richest Chinese man, Wang Jianling, who made numerous overseas acquisitions in 2017, right, including the AMC theaters, which he sold, right, and a British yacht manufacturer, a Hollywood production company called Legendary Entertainment, and a European theater operator. Um, so Wang and his rich friends buy landmark properties and international brands to transfer their money assets overseas. And ordinary Chinese have learned from them. They buy residential houses and land. They acquire assets without considering the price or even business prospects, because their goal is to move the money across the border. Um, those are the known methods, right? I've talked about 4 methods, but there are 4 other methods that are very creative, and I think people here should be aware of, because you may run into them. So method number 5 is called fake cross-border lawsuits. A Seattle lawyer by the name of Dan Harris published a blog in 2016 disclosing a case. Basically, a Chinese client of his law firm asked him to help to file a fake lawsuit with the intention to transfer money. The owner of a private Chinese manufacturing company asked his law firm to help them intentionally lose a fake breach of contract lawsuit that would have required him to pay $3.5 million to a US company. He then paid his penalty to the US company, which was actually controlled by the Chinese man himself. So, so that's one method that the Chinese have thought of. Another creative way is called Chinese collateral for foreign loans, using Chinese collateral for foreign loans. This is a scheme that Chinese who have substantial assets in China or established business, like a real business operation in China, use. So here's how it goes. So let's say we have a Chinese businessman. Let's call him Mr. Zhang, right? He invested in an American project and is willing to use his equity in his Chinese company as collateral for an American loan worth $100 million. Oh, maybe that's too high. Let's say $50 million. The U.S. bank investigated his business and his assets in China and find that he does have, all of those assets and equity are real. He does hold those assets. So they approved his loan application. So Mr. Zhang got the $50 million loan. However, to the surprise of the US bank, he later decided not to repay the dollar loan. And he would rather forfeit his Chinese company. He told the American bank that they could just take his Chinese business and assets and do whatever they want with it. And because this is part of the agreement, so technically it isn't a fraud. It isn't fraudulent. And the bank can't really sue him. So from his perspective, he didn't even want his business in China, and he doesn't mind giving it up. And this practice has emerged in recent years, and Chinese has given it a name. It's called Chinese collateral for foreign loans. And I heard someone said that a few Wall Street banks have been defrauded this way, have lost money this way. All right. So, and then method number 7, it's called foreign exchange through commodity or insurance. And this is how it works. So let's say a wealthy Chinese buy 100,000 or 200,000 expensive watch, Patek Philippe watch, or a very expensive piece of jewelry, let's say $200,000 or $500,000 piece of jewelry. And they made an arrangement with the merchant to return it in a few days. And the refund is made to their Union Pay card or by check, but in foreign currency. And they agreed to pay the merchant 5 to 10% refund. Or they could buy the piece in China and travel to outside China to return it to the foreign store, right? They could buy the jewelry in the store. I mean, all these high-end watch makers have, stores in China, and then they could buy it in China and then go to New York or yeah, Paris or somewhere to return it and say, I want you to issue my refund in US dollar or euro, and I'm willing to pay you a fee for that trouble that you go through. So that's another way. And Chinese have also used this scheme to buy insurance policies in the overseas market using their Union Pay cards, and they can cancel the policy within a month or two, and with the refund going directly to their overseas account. Um, so not only just jewelry or watch, but also insurance policy. Um, I think that's the seven, and then there are other means are through casinos. I mean, this is already known. And the craziest one that I've seen is changing the IP address of overseas UnionPay terminals. So, for example, when someone uses a UnionPay credit card in Hong Kong, Macau, or other places outside mainland China, and if the UnionPay system or the terminal is fooled into thinking that the location is on the mainland, then the transaction technically would be considered domestic. And so I think that's just it's really crazy. So yeah, so those are the ways that the Chinese have been using. I'm sure there are other ways, but these are the ways that I've seen that people have summarized for Chinese to move money uh, overseas. I think it's rather sad. Chinese are very smart, but the CCP doesn't allow them to have a proper outlet for their intelligence. So their creative ideas go into scheming against the system and sometimes against each other because that's their survival, right? Their state of survival. But when Chinese come here with this mentality, they're creating troubles for their new environment here and causing people to dislike them. And I have people asking me, how I look at the problem that Chinese are being discriminated against in this country. It's a tough question. On the one hand, Chinese are sick and tired of the system there and want to run or run away. And in a way, they are victims of the CCP, right, for decades. But on the other hand, they have brought with them these deviated practices and mindset, and they're not welcomed by people outside. It's not their fault, but they are, paying the price. I don't know. I don't know if there's any good solution. I think the only solution is to end CCP and reconnect Chinese people to their tradition and culture, because they're not. I mean, after the traditional Chinese culture is destroyed, people don't have anything to hold on to, and the only thing the CCP allows them to believe in is money. So the Chinese have a saying, we're so poor that the only thing we have is money. So I think the only solution is to end the CCP and then reintroduce traditional Chinese culture back to China. But that's easier said than done. How do you revive a culture when the government is the one that has ruined it on purpose? Right? If you behave like a good Chinese today, you can't even survive. You can't even survive there. So on that note, I think it's tough, but yeah, and then I think Shenyun Performing Arts. I don't know if you have seen Shenyun Performing Arts. They're the Chinese dance company that goes around the world and perform. I think they're on tour right now. They have these colorful ads, posters. I think they're doing a fantastic job bringing back the respect that the Chinese people deserve. Because through music and dance, they show the world the real Chinese, the real China before CCP came. And I think every Chinese should watch it to rediscover their own cultural heritage. Because that's the real China. That's the real Chinese, not the one that the CCP has made us believe, has turned us into. And I also think that Westerners, yeah, can appreciate from showing performances what real Chinese are, so that they have a better understanding of Chinese culture, and this may help them understand China and certain Chinese behavior. I just don't think there's no easy solution to that question, because yeah. But I know a lot of Chinese is doing everything they can to to send their money overseas, send their kids, overseas, and money overseas. So, so with that, I wrap up my presentation. Let me see if people have any questions for me. All right. From Renaissance Chambara, are China's official numbers ever amended like UK numbers are? You mean the financial numbers? What numbers? You mean the trade numbers? You mean amended after they discover it's not correct? I mean, their numbers are not correct anyways. Uh, I'm not quite sure what you mean by amended. So if the numbers are fake, what's the point of amending a fake number? You know, from fake to fake, so um, from Russell Fender, do you have any fixed schedule for your live streams? Oh yeah, that's a good question. I used to do Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. This past week, I didn't do a Thursday. Um, I have been trying, yeah, so I've been trying to cut down on the number of long programs that I've been doing, because I found that doing 4 long programs and shorts are very, very time consuming. And it's also at a point where, um, because I'm, all by myself and doing everything myself. So I need to balance my life and still have a life. So I decided to do 3 long programs every week and do more shorts because the shorts are easier to do and they're as informative and I could do them sooner and faster and they help me grow my channel. So I'm going to cut down the number of long programs from 4 to 3, um, for the time being, unless I find some help and then I could increase my productivity again. So right now, Saturday, I'll definitely keep my Saturday live stream. Tuesday or Thursday, maybe Tuesday, I'll do Tuesday because a lot of things happen over the weekend and I think I need to do a live on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays and Saturdays for sure, definitely for live streams. And then Thursday, I want to do a scripted video because those video requires more research. I just think it's time for me to improve my quality, and I really need time to think through a lot of issues. So that's the plan for now. So hopefully, maybe one day I'll do more when I get more help. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for that's a great question, and thank you for the donation. From Renaissance Chambara, trade numbers are often amended due to data limitations. Um, okay, so trade data. I don't know. I think I'll have to get back to you on that. Um, I don't know. So okay, Van Cat, is Shiyun performing arts traditional Chinese art? Yeah, they are. Their mission, the company's mission is to revive traditional Chinese culture uh, through music and dance, and they're based in the United States. So if you think about it, it's rather ironic. Like the most authentic Chinese performance is not from China, is from the US, or shall we say, American performing arts company is trying to revive traditional Chinese culture around the world. So I think, isn't that ironic? It should come from China, right? But it's not. So Yeah, but they're traditional. All right, so did you hear about from JPJ? Did you hear about the U.S. capturing, hijacking, remote controlling the spy balloons and crashing it to recover it? Oh yes, I did. I did. I talked about it a number of times. Yes. Um, how broke does the CCP need to be for people to leave it? I don't think it needs to be broke for people to leave it. I mean, people have been leaving for the past 20 years. Um, the all the wealthy or super wealthy people have have sent their assets and children overseas, right? It's only the upper middle class. I think a lot of the upper middle class, um, they they stayed China. They returned to China because they felt like they were able to make more money there. But a lot of the people have already changed. The 3 year pandemic have woke them up, So I think the upper middle class are want to come, but all the super rich have already left. Yeah. Okay, you said TikTok parent company got bought out by another company. I can't find it anywhere. Can you share your source? The link, I provided the video link I provided the source as soon as I finished the live stream in the description in my video. If you go back to that video, there should be a link. If the link is no longer available, then that means the CCP took it down because it's super sensitive to them. It was a small company that was registered on the last day of December last year, December 30th last year, was registered for 1 million renminbi, now own 99.8% of TikTok's parent company. And that's like an ant swallowing an elephant, right? So the link should be there. I provided the link. If the link does not point to anywhere, that means it's taken down. Um, TD, I don't know what you're talking about. The link, okay, you're saying that I didn't fact check, but the link, it came from official Chinese media. All the Chinese state media carried, the information isn't from me. If you say I didn't fact check, then you're really saying the state media in China lied. So you're still pointing it at CCP because I'm not quoting my own source. I'm not quoting, the way I do this is I quote all media reports, whether it's Chinese or Western media. So if you're saying I'm not right, then you're saying they're not right. If you're saying CCP is, if you're saying that report is not right, then the CCP was lying. Then my question is, why would CCP, the state media, lie about creating a new company that owned 99.8% of TikTok's parent company? Why do they lie about it? Do you know the answer? That's also a problem. Why did it create a fake news to make people think a tiny small company now owned ByteDance? What's the agenda behind that? Can you talk about that? All right. So, all right. So, any idea for what I can do now? From our number one Wu Mao fan, I think he's just I think he's just he joins us every time, so I think he's really having a great time. Um, say from Chris, ignore him, Lei. He's probably a little pink. Yes, I know, but sometimes you need to get back to these people so that you know. I think I ignore them for the most part, but sometimes I think uh, I think it's okay. Um, do you have any books which represent traditional Chinese culture? I wish there's one book that tells us all about traditional Chinese culture. Um, I think it's hard. It's just like if I ask you, is there a book that could tell me about American culture? It's probably not, right? It's because culture is really a collective of things. It's hard to put a culture into a book. So if I ask you, well, tell me what American culture is all about. Give me one book to read so I can learn everything about American culture. It's probably hard. So by the same token, I think it's hard. Um, yeah. And I'm still trying to learn traditional Chinese culture. So maybe other Chinese can better answer your question. Maybe I have been being ignorant because there are many aspects of my culture that I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, the CCP will fall. Yes, I think CCP will fall. It's just a matter of time. TikTok at ByteDance. Okay, to answer that question, it's very interesting. Uh, ByteDance, technically, that company no longer exists because they changed the authority, Beijing authority made ByteDance to change the company. So if you look at the parent company that owns TikTok, it used to be ByteDance, but now it's called TikTok something some no no I see the Chinese name Douyin. Yeah, it's the pinyin Douyin something something. It's not ByteDance anymore. So they had a name change in 2022 before they made that ownership change. I think it was the summer of 2022 when they changed the name to Douyin. Yeah. And I noticed that. I thought that was interesting. All right. Thank you. Please read my previous post. There's just a lot of posts. I don't know which one is the previous one. Um, Richard, sorry, I'm just picking questions randomly from Richard January. Lei, do you have any opinion of the US Congresswoman Judy Chu? She's accused of CCP association. Um, I read on one Chinese American uh, posted there was a there were four Chinese American there were four congressmen or congresswomen who voted against uh, what was it? I think maybe the establishment of a congressional committee that what is it called? It's Kevin McCarthy. When he became the speaker, he set up a committee. What's the name of that? To deal with the CCP. Uh, it was that, or was something related to China, or some condemnation against the CCP. Not the balloon. Sorry, but there were four congressmen and congresswomen who voted against, and Judy Chu was one of them. And I remember one Chinese American. I don't know if she's from California. It sounds like she is, and said, "Remember." And the post goes, "Remember who voted against um, that that resolution or law or piece of law uh, or whatever you call that, but they voted against it." So show their picture. Judy Chu was one of them. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard if you're a VIP if you're a Chinese American and if you're a VIP, you are a target for the CCP, and they have I mean, they pay special attention to you, and they will take care of you. They'll take care of your family. They'll make you. How many people are strong enough to uh, to know that this is a trap, right? So, and then they have studied you so well beforehand. They know what you like. They know what you dislike. So we'll customize uh, an offering to you that will hit your heart. That's exactly what you want. So the chances for you to not fall into their trap is very small. Okay, let me see you. Question. MYC. With a very dismal economy, do you think the CCP is eager to open the country to tourism by this summer? It depends on the situation of the pandemic, and that's not something the CCP can control. Just yesterday, I was reading that there's some kind of outbreak happening in schools in China, and several schools have already closed. And some schools said it's COVID, and some denied it. And because right now the government is trying to, you know, trying to make it appear that COVID is gone. Like there's no COVID in China, so they don't test people for COVID, and they don't diagnose people for COVID. So it caused panic amongst parents because you see schools being closed, kids having fevers, being sent home, and they're not just like one or two kids, like a large outbreak in the schools. And then parents want to know what it is, and then the schools don't tell them, and that caused panic. So this is not good, but it's hard to say. When it comes to summer, will the CCP be able to, control the pandemic? I don't know. Yeah. Um. Sorry. Always a great presentation, Lei. Thank you. Um. All right. If you have questions for me, just type my name, Lei, so I know it's for me. Otherwise, there are a lot of comments here. I don't know if there are other questions for me. Okay, from John Smith. Have you read the CCP try to interfere Canadian election? Yes, I have. There was one guy they elected called, yeah. It's hard because I don't know the guy that you mentioned, but I have read that they have interfered with the Canadian election. So here's the question. I mean, it goes back to my, the discrimination question. So, the more I talk about these issues, then some Chinese Americans are concerned, then you're really making the Western world, feeling paranoid about Chinese. Are you really helping your own people? That's the question. I mean, I'm sensitive to that. But I think these issues ought to be addressed. You can't just avoid. I mean, these problems, that the problem, CCP is not just hurting Chinese. They are hurting Chinese Americans. They are hurting Americans. They're hurting Canadians. So it's not about who's who's on their side. I mean, in a way, I said that all the Chinese, they left China, they come here, they cheat on the banks, they create these fictitious lawsuits or fraudulent lawsuits, fake lawsuits. I mean, but they're also the victims. So why do we have to fight amongst ourselves or discriminate each other or not like each other? I mean, we're on the same boat. The rest of the world is dealing with the CCP, so we shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves. The only solution is get rid of the CCP. I think that's the only solution. Otherwise, people could be fighting amongst ourselves, and that's exactly the agenda the CCP has, to have other people, fight and turn against each other, start using the word discrimination, I just think it's counterproductive. So I don't like to engage in that kind of conversation. I think we need to really understand, who is the bad guy here, and not be distracted. All right, so I think I've answered a lot of questions. Oh, unconventional ideas, Lei. Do you think that CCP may try to find its own George Santos, congressman who lied about everything, figure and get him or her elected to do their bidding? I think I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. They have been grooming their candidates, or potential candidates for decades, for a long time. But But right now, I don't know how successful they are. Even people who they have groomed are probably nervous right now because of the way things have been going, right? I don't think who would still want to be on the CCP's side today? Think about it. Although, well, Apple just Apple just decided to give its AR business, the it's called what, artificial reality devices, to a Chinese firm, um, which is kind of a competitor with Foxconn. So the R&D department um, of a Taiwanese manufacturing company is turning all of that over to a mainland Chinese it's called Li Xun, right? It has an English name, Luxshare. Um, and that surprised many people, right? And it says Apple has never given its first generation product R&D or manufacturing to a Chinese firm, and it's doing that right now. So, okay, so all right, thank you, everyone. All right, I think I've answered all the questions. I wish everyone a great weekend. Uh, I hope I will do more lives if I can. But right now, my long programs are Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. All right. Have a great night or great evening. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye bye.